So fossa crani posterior. People, you're losing focus. Fossa crani posterior. So, of course, the biggest opening is, no, first, the bony surfaces. So we have in the middle here, clivus. Clivus is the superior surface of, tell me the bone and part. Pars basilaris. Os occipitale pars basilaris. Here we have os occipitale partes laterales, the lateral parts, and right posterior here we have the squama or pars squamosa ossis occipitalis facies interna, and of course we do have the facies posterior of the pars petrosa. Good. Now let's start with the biggest one, foramen magnum. Of course we have a lot of things here. Major is spinal cord with the meninges. Arteria vertebralis, that is a very important vascular source for the posterior brain. Where does it come from? Arteria vertebralis comes from arteria. It's the first branch of arteria subclavia and goes into no. The pathway. It's called vertebral because it ascends through these openings, starting from the sixth cervical vertebra. It enters these openings and then it goes out because atlas is wider than the rest. So its transverse process is larger. I mean, the opening is lateral. So it goes out, penetrates that opening too, and then it turns medially to be placed into sulcus arteriae vertebralis on the atlas, anterior arch, if you remember osteology. And then it penetrates membrana atlanto-occipitalis because we need that membrane to close off the tunnel, the canalis spinalis. And then it will be eventually uniting to form arteria basilaris. That is placed in sulcus basilaris on the anterior surface of the pons. And this whole thing happens right here on the clivus. Okay? Good. Now, of course, we have something else. What do we have here? We have a plexus venosus vertebralis internus that communicates with sinus occipitalis. That's around the opening. Yes? And we also have the spinal roots of the accessory nerve. Okay. These are the major things only. Next, let's say it's canalis, not canalis, but meatus acousticus, yes.
Do we have also nervous abductions?
Where?
On the clivus? Or no?
What do you mean? Communication or pathway?
It's a pathway that is going.
Of course, nervus abducens will be the one that comes up last, as it's the last oculomotor nerve. I mean, it's the last of the group. It will climb up last. It needs to climb clivus in order to reach the posterior side right here of sinus cavernosus, and then be placed over a short distance into its lateral wall in order to penetrate then sinus cavernosus and be placed on the lateral side of the carotis interna, and then rotates under carotis interna but never reaches its medial side of the carotis interna, and then it leaves the sinus cavernosus to go through fissura orbitalis inferior. Before that, it splits into the superior and inferior branches. Damn, I've been talking since 8 o'clock this morning. So, meatus acousticus internus. Meatus acousticus internus, besides the nerves, it has arteria and vena labyrinthi. Those vessels are in fact for the internal ear. Nerves are very simple, 7 prime, and 8, isn't it? What's the interesting aspect? That 8 ends at the end of meatus acousticus internus. It distributes into its own directions in order to reach the spiral ganglion of Corti and the scarpa ganglion, the vestibular ganglion, and thus these ganglia are in fact the ganglia that house the pseudounipolar cells of the two receptor apparatuses. And then the vestibulocochlear nerve itself is in fact what? Is made up by central processes of these cells that are housed or located in these two ganglia. What about nervus facialis? Nervus intermedius. They go through meatus, the canalis area facialis first. Where is area facialis?
The superior part of
The anterior superior quadrant of this area. So canalis facialis, nervus facialis, nervus intermedius, geniculum, and this is where nervus intermedius kinda terminates, not really, but kinda, with the ganglion geniculi. And nervus facialis will exit right here. Foramen stylomastoideum. Also, we have an artery here. Yes? Arteria stylomastoidea. Yes? And what about nervus intermedius? Nervus intermedius will eventually give nervus petrosus major. We talked about that. And also it will nervus corda tympani, or just plainly corda tympani. Corda tympani will in fact be splitting off after ganglion geniculi. Yes? So it still goes, we still have some fibers that go with nervus facialis, but before its exit right here, we will have corda tympani splitting off and exiting from the pars petrosa via, what is the name of the opening? Where corda tympani exits, it's right here. I have the needle tip on the opening. Almost.
Petro.
Thank you. Petrotympanica. It is fissura petrotympanica. Do you remember anything about this fissura petrotympanica of Glaser? How it's made? No. Crista tegmentalis, does it say anything to you?
It's the ceiling of
No, that's not the ceiling. The ceiling is, what is the ceiling? Tegmen tympani, that's the ceiling. Crista tegmentalis is a detached bony plate that belongs to the pars petrosa. Look here. Do you see this different bone? This area is like a different bone that has been wedged. Do you know what that means? Wedged between? Like crammed between this part. This part is called pars squamosa. Fossa mandibularis is part of the squamous part. This part is called pars tympanica, meatus acousticus externus. So between pars tympanica and pars squamosa, we have this wedged in bone, and that's crista tegmentalis, pars petrosa. So that's why we have towards pars tympanica fissura petrotympanica, and towards pars squamosa fissura petrosquamosa here. Where we don't have any more crista tegmentalis, which is right here in the lateral side, we have the direct contact between the two bones, and that's what we call fissura tympanosquamosa. Do you understand? So over a short distance, we have 3 fissures because of the wedging of pars petrosa's crista tegmentalis here. The third fissure is tympanomastoidea, fissura tympanomastoidea, between the mastoid process and the tympanic part. The fourth, I said third, the fourth fissure. Yes, so these are all the fissures of the parts. Oh, goody. It's more obvious on this side. Do you see the big openings here? I think it's more obvious here. This is the wedged in part as it continues all the way here into the fissure. It's more obvious. This is the crista tegmentalis, where I have the needle tip right there. So remember that corda tympani, in fact, exits right here exits right here, which right here is in fact where? Right near the head of the mandible, medial to the head of the mandible, I mean right near ATM, articulatio temporomandibularis, where in fact eventually nervus mandibularis will give off its nervus lingualis branch. Remember that, it comes this way kinda, in the air of course now, in order to innervate the tongue mostly, but also other areas. Why am I saying this? Because coda tympani will eventually join nervus lingualis. Why? Because nervus lingualis is just a carrier. Remember that? Nervus lingualis, and not only, but a lot of trigeminal branches, since the trigeminal system reaches most of the structures of the pre-auricular face. Why am I saying pre-auricular? It's anterior, so innervation of trigeminal nature or trigeminal innervation is anterior to the ear. So that's the pre-auricular innervation area. So trigeminal system reaches most of the structures, so it's a perfect carrier for other fibers as well. This doesn't make those fibers part of the trigeminal system, as the trigeminal system is just used as a carrier here. So nervus lingualis will take these fibers to ganglion submandibulare, and eventually innervate. There will be, we will have the innervation of glandula sublingualis and submandibularis. Secretomotor innervation. Okay, good. Next is, of course, foramen ugulare. Foramen ugulare is pretty simple. If we think about it, what is this? Do you see that? Exactly. It's the intrajugular process. If we, on the petrous part, if you look at this one here, it's the intrajugular process on the occipital bone. Yes? In fact, you can see it's a bony bridge if you look at it. And that's the separation into pars nervina and pars vascularis. Yes? So we have the pars nervina for the passage of the cranial nerves, and we have the vascular part, which in fact on the outside has fossa jugularis. Yes? And that is in fact for the bulbus superior vene jugularis interne, which means the superior dilated part where it starts, vena jugularis interna. So we have the vena jugularis interna passing through pars vascularis, and maybe arteria meningia posterior that may pass here as well. And pars nervina has the cranial nerves, as we all used to it. 9, 10, 11. Yes? These pass here. Okay, now the next one should be two simple openings down here. We have canalis nervi hypoglossi or canalis hypoglossi. It's for the hypoglossal nerves. And of course we have right here canalis condylaris that I should be able to penetrate, but I'm not able on this skull. This houses vena emissaria condylaris. That, if you look at the pathway of the needle, points anterior, so it should exit somewhere around here in sinus sigmoideus. Yes, as a venous connection. Okay. Also, right here we have foramen mastoideum for vena emissaria mastoidea. But as you can see, variations occur. We have two on this skull. You see two openings, similar openings. Also here on this side. Okay? So, but if we can penetrate with the needle, we will be able, damn, I'm tearing parts of it. We should be able to see, no, we are not, that we have a connection with sinus sigmoideus again. Okay. What else? Nothing?